Let's now cross live to Annette Young, host of the award-winning 51%. She joins us from the Louvre, where the event is being held. Annette, it's great to have you with us. You know, the pandemic has very much rolled back decades of what we can refer to as limited progress in women's rights. Just how effective will this gathering be?
Well, let me just point out at this time, Sanam, the interesting thing about this actual event is that it was supposed to happen over a year ago. And of course, not surprisingly, it was postponed until now. The reason being is that 25 years ago, in Beijing, 189 countries, along with the help and the support of the UN, decided to prioritise gender equality. And at that very same conference was the then First Lady, Hillary Clinton, who made that very famous statement, women's rights are human rights and human rights are women's rights. So it's only fitting that, of course, one of the guest speakers at today's event will be none other than Hillary Clinton. The event will be opened by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and also by President Emmanuel Macron. And of course, the big issue is the pandemic and the impact it's had on women across the world. You only have to look, say, for instance, at the US, which is the wealthiest nation in the world, where close to 1 million people lost their jobs in one quarter of last year, of which 80% were women. Why? Because they were working in sectors which offered them flexible work so they could take care of their kids, such as travel, hospitality and the service sector. And as a result, we all know what happened with those particular sectors thanks to COVID-19. And of course, you only have to translate that across the world to know how catastrophic it has been for women, not only just here in Western Europe, but across the global south. And of course, the other key element to all of this is the massive rise in domestic violence, with the UN estimating that the amount of, or rather the figure of domestic violence increasing somewhere around 80% globally as a result of the pandemic.
Annette, you've been listing for us essentially the plethora of challenges that obviously face this cause. Funding, we know, is one of them, a key factor.
Indeed, and this is what it's, as one would say, it's all about the money. And this meeting, this event is exactly about that. It's about fundraising, making sure that government, civil society, the private sector are all kicking in order to ensure that women are not shortchanged. The concern is by the UN Women that since that conference in 1995, that development on behalf of women's rights has been incredibly slow, almost incremental. That can no longer be the case, and that's been more than highlighted by COVID-19. So as a result, today we're expecting announcements from various governments, also big multinationals such as Google, Microsoft, Ford Foundation, the Gates Foundation, Melinda Gates will also be here as well. People who will be asked to donate substantial amounts of money to do what they can to ensure that the status of women is not only maintained but improved. And the other big thing that will be mentioned here is closing the digital gap for women, particularly in the global south, in those developing nations where less than 10% of women in poorer countries have access to the internet. And that's something that certainly will be discussed at today's event.
Annette Young, the host of France 24's 51%, with that update from the Louvre here in the French capital.